Hello, Shannon.
Hello, boss.
Okay, are we online?
We are online and we are live.
Oh, great. Well, have you let everybody know your terrible condition?
Yep, I'm under the weather, so it's pretty much going to be the Anna show today. I am here for
Yeah,
immoral support.
right. And I am recovering from essentially work-induced laryngitis. So, I'm not going to be as talkative as I normally am either. Um, too many meetings, too much late night. Just my voice gave out on me, and it hurts to speak at this moment. But anyway, um, updates. We are fine. Everything is going to work out for us. Our people are safe, and you will have money in the midst of the maelstrom. So don't worry about it. Okay. There's a lot of craziness going on right now. A lot of things that appear to be one thing and are actually another. A lot of things that are just plain crazy that will get straightened out. And, like I've said on other occasions, we're back to the old saying, don't believe everything you hear, don't believe anything you hear and only half of what you see. Okay, so this is really a situation where you need to take that to heart because the media is blowing steam in all directions. And the Trump administration is blowing it out one ear, and the liberal progressives are blowing it out the other ear, and we've got Hollywood spinning news media, and it's crazy out there right now. What you need to believe.
Let me make sure she plugged in her computer to hardline. I'll be right back, people.
Arguably committing fraud.
Hello. We missed about everything there. Did you run that hardline like last time?
No.
You should be fine without it. We missed everything but the last words, arguably committing fraud.
Okay. Sorry, folks. You can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm basically reminding everybody, don't believe everything that you're seeing or hearing because it's not reliable. Okay. We've got huge media spin organizations, and even Hollywood is involved in creating false news narratives and all sorts of stuff going on. So just ignore it. What's happened here is that the banks got caught, essentially. They were selling silver delivery contracts as if silver delivery contracts were silver. And they were using a undisclosed distinction between allocated silver and unallocated silver to try to excuse this. And as I observed in a recent article, I believe it was just released this afternoon, it's like arranging to buy a horse and thinking that you're buying a horse and being given a saddle instead. It's kind of a bait and switch fraud where people thought that they were buying silver and that they understood that allocated silver meant that it was, ounces of silver that were set aside with their name attached to it. And then they naturally thought that unallocated silver meant that there was basically a silver stockpile, and that their ounces of silver were accounted for in that stockpile and could be taken out of the stockpile and delivered. But instead, what happened is that the bank actually took their funds under this presumption and didn't buy any silver at all. They just took the people's funds, gave them a delivery contract, and never actually bought any silver. So when the day came and the people wanted their silver, and it was a larger percentage than the now the Bank for International.
All right, we heard the point about when it comes time for you to get the silver, you were promised for the money you paid them, and then you cut out again.
There wasn't any silver, right? They hadn't actually bought any silver with the money you gave them. They had given you a contract to deliver silver, but they hadn't actually bought any silver to deliver. So when people asked for their silver, the banks couldn't deliver it because they hadn't bought it yet. It's a fraud scheme. They were using your money under false pretenses. And yet they were allowed to do that by the bank regulators and institutions that are responsible for regulating banks. So now all of a sudden, on Friday, the Bank for International Settlements, which allowed all this to go on and that has been sitting around twiddling its thumbs, waiting for banks to comply with the Basel III Accords for 10 years, came out from the closet like the bogeyman and said, well, we are downgrading the value of these paper silver delivery contracts to Tier 3. Tier 3 means that they're risky, illiquid investments, and that they therefore do not count on the bank's asset balance sheet as being liquid and reliable. They're no longer Tier 1 assets. Therefore, because they have been redefined, relabeled in the system as Tier 3 instead of Tier 1, now all of a sudden, Bank for International Settlements roars to life and says, oh, you have to have 85% Tier 1 assets backing all these Tier 3 assets that you have taken on as liabilities. Oh, so suddenly the banks have to come up with another 75% of the total value of the paper silver contracts they hold, or they lose their banking license. Well, there are those of us who could and have and do argue that they should never have been permitted to do this in the first place. And that having done it, the answer is not this particular approach, but to step back from the whole scenario and change. Not just kick people out because they got caught holding the bag, or as I describe it, a musical chairs game. Just because they were the one left standing doesn't mean that they're guilty or more guilty than any of the other banks who did all the same things and didn't get caught, or who were able to find enough other additional Tier 1 asset backing to fulfill that extra burden of having 75% more Tier 1 asset funding to back those silver contracts. Anyway, the whole thing is a horrible mess. It's just absolutely beyond belief that they got away with it this long, and that nobody called them on it, and that the bank regulators were absolutely useless. And now all of a sudden they clamp down so hard that lots of banks are going to be insolvent. The reason they're going to be insolvent is that silver is leveraged 32 to 1. And at the same time, treasuries are soft. What this means is that the Federal Reserve doesn't have it to lend them, right? And at the same time, the silver market has only about an eighth of what it needs to be really truly solvent and continue on with business as usual. So, a fine kettle of fish, and you're looking at lots and lots of banks, not exactly going bankrupt, but being unable to conduct business, unable to function. They're not connected to a network of anything anymore. The moment they lose their license, they lose their ability to send money via the SWIFT monopoly. Well, there's another subject. Should we have a bank transfer monopoly? My answer is no. That should be illegal too. The more you dig, the more things you find that are just absolutely screw loose and fraudulent and criminal in the banking system. So anyway, the guys that got caught with the silver delivery contracts that aren't deliverable now have to come up with a whole bunch more money to insure those contracts and liabilities that the bank accepted. And it isn't even their fault, but they're being forced out of business because they won't be able to make the additional asset requirements. Now our thought is, well, come home. Join the global family network. Become a good bank. Operate under rational, clean requirements. And then you don't have this problem. Then you can have a network of banks that actually are doing what they should be doing. So if you have a local bank closure because they got caught in this ringer, then, tell them, hey, you can continue business. You can continue to have a network. You don't have to just give up because you're no longer part of a monopoly, which is illegal anyway. You have other options. You can become a prosperity center instead of a bank and have a new mission and have things that are honest and true and
Once again, I apologize for the hookups because apparently the internet's being a pain today.
Shannon, am I going to have to try to figure this out and just...
Nope, we got you. It's not you. Plugging in won't do anything. I just checked. It's MTA again.
Okay.
You
All
left
right.
off with
So,
the people who are honest and true, and then that was all we heard.
oh, well, so those who are honest and true are going to survive this just fine, and they can shed their skin and leave the old banking system behind and have the opportunity to be a prosperity center and have a new mission and have new opportunities. They do not have to sit there and close their doors just because the SWIFT monopoly has cast them out and taken their license. Okay, so if you have local banks that are going bankrupt or going under and closing their doors because of this, make the effort to go down to the local bank and let people know that, hey, there's a different banking option. You can do something totally different and keep your doors open and get your debts paid off and be solvent and happy again. Go talk to Global Family Bank. They have a network that is outside the SWIFT system that's global. Hello. So this is good news. Actually, it's good news for a lot of banks that would otherwise be stuck in the SWIFT system and be stuck paying for the sins of regulators who didn't do their job. So anyway, as for you, don't worry. You already have gold and silver. You already have prepaid credit stacked up. And you're all ready to go. So even if you had an unfortunate experience with unallocated silver, you thought you'd bought silver months ago and had it all stacked away neat and clean in the bank, and then you find out, oh, the bank didn't actually buy any silver. They just let me think they did. Oh, well, now there's not enough silver to go around, so all they can do is pay me with Federal Reserve notes, which is what I was trying to invest in something as a hedge against the inflation of the Federal Reserve notes to begin with. So a lot of disappointed investors, and the banks can't do anything because they've leveraged silver 32 to 1. So there's 32 ounces of paper silver to every ounce of real silver in the system. And there's no way to boot up production to cover that. So they're going to have to cover it with other tier 1 assets, meaning gold or cash. And for various reasons, the Federal Reserve isn't able to help because, number one, they still have $7 trillion that they haven't paid off from the 2008 debacle. They've had a counterfeiting problem that won't stop easily because Obama sent printing presses, paper, and ink to foreign countries and just set up basically printing mills in places like Thailand. And because the Fed is looking at soft treasuries, a lot of the treasuries haven't even sold because investors don't trust the treasuries to have value. And so, long story short, the Fed doesn't have anything that they can loan banks on a emergency basis. When this first started, you may recall that JP Morgan got caught and they had to apply for an immediate loan of something like 34 billion through the Fed window. Well, the Fed window isn't inexhaustible. And so when you have a lot of banks that are caught in the same situation, the Federal Reserve can't make up for that overnight. And as a result, you're seeing a lot of bank closures, or you will be seeing a lot of bank closures. One other thing that could save them is that it seems rather opportunistic on the part of the Bank of International Settlements to take their licenses with a 72-hour notice after sitting on it for 10 years. And I do think that there will probably be litigation affecting these timelines and the the particulars, the details of how this was done, when it was done, and why it was done, all of that. I think it will go to court. But like I said, meantime, let people know and don't worry about it yourselves, because all the things that are happening in Washington now and all these crazy laws that are getting passed, the laws to confiscate and the laws to limit cash and all this stuff that's going on. Remember, if it wasn't actually read into the congressional record 3 times, it doesn't affect you. It affects your employees. And that's just the facts, ma'am. And that's a very simple way to explain it to them. So they can rant and they can rave, but they have no legal or lawful right to confiscate any private property belonging to any American. And the topic and issue of who's an American has now reached the highest courts in the world. And it has reached the real office where the pedal comes to metal, which is the United States Secretary of State. A lot of the things that were wrong, that were not done correctly, were under the office of the United States Secretary of State. And it was made his responsibility by the Parliament. And the reason that we don't see this or know this is that Americans are not used to looking at Parliament as a legislative body having anything to say about us. But in fact, the Parliament has been regularly passing all sorts of nonsense that's been foisted off on us under the presumption that we were British subjects. You know, this whole narrative that our government was an interregnum then gave rise to the claim on the part of the British territorial government, the federal subcontractors, that they were representing us in our absence. Okay. And so suddenly we supposedly all began to be British subjects, and the British Parliament was passing laws left and right that affected us that we were not aware of, couldn't be conscionable of, and wouldn't have any reason to think had anything to do with us. And yet, because of the way they had set things up and the false claims that they had made based on birth registrations and other nonsense, they were holding us accountable for British law. Anyway, the United States Secretary of State was made responsible for doing the things like setting up the mutual offset credit exemption program that was never actually set up. Okay, that was set up. We were held exempt from levy and tax prepaid as part of the remedy for what they did in 1930s when they seized our silver in exchange for IOUs and substituted a legal tender for actual silver-backed currency. So they were supposed to provide the mutual offset credit exemption exchanges to us so that we would have a means of paying them for their services to us, right? And they would at the same time have a means of paying us back for what they had purloined. So they owe a huge debt to us over here, and we owe a little itty bitty debt to them over there. But instead of them allowing this mutual offset credit exchange exemption to happen so that we could swap debts, they never actually set up the remedy. They never actually set up any such program. They kind of left it twirling in ether space and never actually told the American public that this was a remedy available to them. Never actually made the program available on any kind of public basis. And so they never actually provided the remedy that they proposed and agreed to when they took our silver. And this has now become a major problem for them because that was what they legalized the Federal Reserve note on. They were allowed to do the Federal Reserve note and legalized the Federal Reserve note as legal tender based on the idea that remedy had been provided to us through the mutual offset credit exemption exchange program, which never was actually implemented. So since they never actually delivered remedy and never made it accessible to the people, their entire Federal Reserve note has been released and used under false pretenses, and it's basically been called into question whether or not this the Federal Reserve note even qualified as legal tender. And that goes all the way back to the 1930s. So if they've been using, as far as I know, that's the only remedy that was offered, and that remedy was not delivered, that means that their Federal Reserve notes have been illegal ever since the 1930s, and they're liable for all of it. So even if they did turn tail at this late date and do the right thing and provide the mutual offset credit exchange exemptions, which is what they should do immediately, if not sooner, they are stuck with the backlog of all these years that remedy was not available. So you see, it's a very sticky wicket. Once banking stuff goes astray, and once remedy is not provided, it becomes a very difficult thing to overcome. And they're right in the middle of it right now. Now, we can overcome the financials. We have the ability to be on the playing board and to actually take care of this mess, but they don't. They can't get themselves out of it. We're the only ones that have the ability to get the entire thing set up again, and set up in a way that works and that is fair and lawful. And it hasn't been until very recently that that message has begun to really get through to the military, especially needed to hear it. Now that more and more people are beginning to understand the basis of what we're telling them, there's more of a concerted action to bring the right people to bear and bring the right resources to bear to straighten out the mess. So don't despair, don't get all focused on the drama. There'll be plenty of drama. But what we need you to keep focused on is your own vision for the future, the issues that you see for your state, the projects, the infrastructure, the needs that you see in your state. And just realize that what you are, the status that you're in is safe, and you will have funds when nobody else does. So you'll be able to help out your friends, your family members, your community, and you'll also have a role in your state assembly. It's going to be a mad house for a while. Okay, that's a given. But it can be a joyous madhouse. It doesn't have to be a sad madhouse, and it certainly doesn't have to devolve into anything threatening in terms of life and limb. It just needs to be straightened out, and we need to kind of quickly restructure how we have been doing business over the past 100 years, which that's going to cause some disruption. There's no doubt. But on the other hand, at the end of the day, it will be a much cleaner, much simpler, much more honest system, and it will be easier for you to live because you won't have to pay foreign corporation taxes. And you'll have whatever, restitution is possible. But I guess the thing that is really important is that you'll have your own assets back. You'll have your freedom back. You'll have your own law back. You'll have your land back. A lot of the burdens of this system, the property taxes, the federal income taxes, the utility taxes, the licenses, all of the record keeping and you know, the burdens that you've had to bear will be gone. And that will give life a whole new joy and freedom. There, freedom. So don't get overly concerned, just work. Just think about it in terms of work and take a practical viewpoint toward it and realize that you already have gold and silver aplenty and you already have prepaid credit that would float a battleship. So you're going to come through just fine. The thing I wanted to warn everybody about actually is something that you may have never thought about. And that is simply that we've all been preconditioned. We've been preconditioned like B.F. Skinner's conditioning experiments and Pavlov's dog. We've been preconditioned to believe in money, and we've been preconditioned to fight. The people that were benefiting from this crooked money system were also benefiting from war profiteering. And so they want to be at perennial, perpetual war, right? So now we have been preconditioned for this because we were the cheap mercenaries that they could draw on to be their muscle. Okay, so they preconditioned us to this circumstance of perpetual war, always fighting for freedom and never having any, right? This is what they did to us. We were, always fighting for freedom, fighting for freedom, fighting for freedom, and enjoying none of it. Okay, this is what they had set up. And now all of a sudden, gee, they can't access us as cheap mercenaries anymore. Oh, yeah. That's kind of throwing a little stick in their red wagon wheels. But we still have to train ourselves. We still have to retrain and recondition ourselves so that we're not addicted to war and fighting. You see, we have struggled for so long and fought for so long that it's really all we know how to do. We don't know how to relax. We don't know how to trust. We've been lied to so much that we can't trust anybody about anything ever, right? That these things become a self-fulfilling prophecy of their own. We have to learn how to trust again. We have to learn how to tell the truth. We have to learn how to be at peace, and we have to be worthy of freedom. Now there's a concept, worthy of freedom. But it's true. In order to be free, and in order to have a free society, you have to have people who are worthy of being free, who can stand up and take responsibility for their own actions, mind their own business, and be responsible. Unfortunately, we have 320 million people who have grown up in a nanny state and don't know how to even behave themselves as adults. This is the worst obstacle that we have to overcome, is to give up the addiction to drama and war and stand up as adults and take responsibility for ourselves. This is it. This is the crux of the entire obstacle that we face as a country and as the entire world that's been affected by this. Now, the instinct that people have is immediately to fight and to blame, like little 5-year-olds. You know, it's just exactly like being the teacher in a kindergarten class for me. I get constant complaints about things that shouldn't even be happening because people have lived in a nanny state for so long that they've forgotten how to be self-respecting adults. And they've never developed any means to resolve their differences but fighting and lying. And so they lie and they cheat and they steal and they gripe and they accuse each other of everything under the sun, just like little kids do. You know, Jamie stole my truck, you know, and I put up with this day after day after day from the assemblies and the assembly members. You know, Johnny won't let me talk, you know. It's just, we have got to retrain ourselves. We have to recondition ourselves so that war is not our addiction, so that peace is our addiction. And we have to, at the same time, in a sense, grow up and realize what it takes to get along with people. We have been preconditioned to be alienated, to be alone, and to look at everybody else around us as the enemy. Okay, we have to quit that. We're not in a nanny state. Big Brother isn't here anymore. Big Brother isn't going to be able to take care of you. Big Brother isn't going to be responsible for you. You're going to have to stand up on your own 2 little feet and say, okay, well, I'm a responsible adult. I know how to conduct myself. I know how to deal with life. And if you don't, you'd better learn. Okay, we have to get past the war addiction, and we have to get to a point where we're standing on our own 2 feet again. And if we don't do that, then we'll fail. It's that simple. So I just want to bring that forward to everybody's attention, that if we can't learn to be trustworthy and trust each other, if we can't learn to be honest and stop lying, if we can't learn to work together cooperatively instead of lapsing back into the war mentality, then nothing that we're doing is going to work. And it is entirely within our power to make it work. But we have to be conscious enough to make good decisions and to make those decisions stick. I am so sick of hearing grown adults call each other names, call each other insurrectionists, accuse everybody who doesn't agree with you of being a district infiltrator. It's just ridiculous, people. You have to learn to put up with each other and to put up with a variety of sometimes widely differing opinions about things and realize that everybody has a right to their opinion. Everybody has a right to their vote. And that's all there is to it. You know, my mother took me aside when I was about 6 and said, well, you can't change other people. I never thought about it. She looked me right in the face and said, I'm the only one who can change me, and you're the only one who can change you.
Duct tape doesn't fix stupidity, but it sure does muffle it.
Right. And having a mute button doesn't mean that you should use it. Okay? A lot of times when we mute other people, we lose the content of what their concerns really are. So, lay off the mute buttons, lay off the insults, lay off the rhetoric, lay off the name calling. That's no way to build an assembly or do anything righteous. You know, I shouldn't even have to be saying this. Everybody I'm speaking to tonight is assumed to be over the age of 21. So I want to see some fellowship develop in the assemblies. I want to see some goodwill and some good faith and some cooperative behavior. And if I don't see it, there are a couple of assemblies that are slated for demolition. Just because they're so foolish that they can't get along with each other. For their common good. So I cannot spend my time fighting the kinds of battles that I'm fighting and be holding hands with the assemblies and telling them not to spit at each other. Just isn't going to work that way. I do not have time to, intervene in your personal interactions, which have gone south as a result of your own fears and your own wrongheadedness. I am not your nanny. And there is no nanny state anymore. So you're just going to have to all grow up and learn to share the sandbox and learn to share the toys and learn to be self-respecting adults and not accuse the Federation of solving all your problems for you and not blame your problems on the Federation because the Federation isn't causing your problems. Stop this idiocy of calling Federation officers federal infiltrators. We're not federal. The Federation officers are ASNs just like everybody else. They have the same rights and the same limits. In fact, they have one more limit that regular ASNs don't have. Federation officers can't be part of the International Business Assembly in any assembly. Okay? So you can stop throwing mud at our Federation officers, which include the coordinators, the marshals at arms, and the rest of the folks that you know as the PKTF and the Continental Marshals. You'll be introduced to some other Federation officials, but the Federation is American. It's not foreign, and it's not the federal government. Okay? I just about want to tear out my hair every time I hear about one of our Federation officers being accused of infiltrating a state assembly that he belongs to. Okay? Or that one of our Federation liaisons in some particular context was interfering with state assembly business when they belong to the state assembly and have every right to say anything they want to say, just like any other ASN. So anyway, that's another aspect of the ill will and the fighting and the power mongering and the little bad boy behavior that I'm getting out of the assemblies lately. We need to be adult. We need to be reasonable. We need to keep our mouths shut when it comes to any name calling and accusations. And last but not least, we've even had attempts at lawfaring in the assemblies. People are finally getting their drill assemblies put together, and they're electing justices, and then they're turning around and trying to use our courts to promote lawfare against people that they don't agree with in the assembly. I got news for you, folks. We don't have thought crimes in America. There are only two grounds to bring charges: direct harm to you or direct harm to your property. Period. There are no thought crimes. There are no statutory infractions. There's no 80 million codes. There's nothing but the real true law, which is to do no harm. Okay? So you're not going to be able to use our courts to conduct the lawfare that you've been used to in the de facto world. Doesn't work that way here. And if I catch wind of anybody bringing trumped up phony charges against anyone for anything and trying to use law and abuse law as a means to get their way politically, I'm going to stomp on that person like a bug. We're here to prevent that kind of behavior. We're here to change it so that the law cannot be abused for such devious purposes of self-aggrandizement and political advantage and illegal confiscation. No, all of that's going away. That's why we're here. And if you're misunderstanding that in the least little bit, it's time to go home and soak your head in the nearest toilet you can find. Because that isn't what we're doing here. So, that has been another issue that has been rearing its ugly head in the assemblies this past week. I don't want to even think about it. It just makes me so angry I could tear off hair and hide. So don't even go there. Don't think about using the law as a means of reprisal against people that you don't agree with. You're just going to have to learn how to accept the fact that there are a lot of viewpoints out there and not all of them match yours. Remember that famous saying, I may not agree with what you say, but I'll fight to the death for your right to say it. Take that to heart and learn to hold your wrist. We're not babies. I'm not going to treat you like babies, and I'm not going to put up with any more of this whining. So everybody just better put on their big boy pants and their big girl pants and stand up as adults. No lying, no cheating, no thieving, no stealing. Okay? It's real simple. Anyway, I've had more than enough to do this week, just dealing with the banking crisis, getting our banks up and rolling, getting everything set so that when you hit the button and need the money, you've got it. And that's been taking up an awful lot of time. And then we've had a lot of other different things that have come up. We've had planning sessions of getting rid of the current prison for profit schemes, getting rid of the components of the Child Protective Services that do the same thing. I mean, prisons for profit and Child Protective Service both make scads of money overcharging for basically incarcerating either kids or criminals. So both of those things are being addressed and examined and slated for slashing and overhaul and redirection right now. I'm sure that's some comfort to hear for those who have suffered family members being incarcerated for thought crimes and petty things that were never illegal to Americans anyway. And I'm sure that is also some comfort for those of you who have suffered with CPS or who are currently suffering with it. Those two things are on the table ready for slice and dicing. And there are a number of other things that are huge. They cost us a lot of money and they cause a lot of destruction to our families and our communities, and they have to be addressed and ended. So we're on the prowl on all of that. Otherwise, I think that as things stand, we're doing good in terms of having the credibility and having our provenance and having our ducks in order and knowing our history and having a good legal stance and a good lawful stance. I think all of that we're doing fine on. We just need to get past this addiction to warfare and start getting past our indoctrination by the nanny state, and we'll do great. And on that note, I will take a couple of questions at least until my voice gives out.
Sorry, trying to find my button. There's rumors of an emergency powers banking app allowing surveillance of funds spent from a bank account, including reports on funds spent over $600 and reporting of funds spent on precious metals. If so, what is your recommendation? I might have to read that again because apparently she ran away. All right, we ready to try that again? Are you there? Nope. She's toying with me.
Have a right to.
There you are. You were toying with me. You're flashing in and out there after you said questions. All right, are we
Okay.
ready? Did you hear all that question?
Yes, I think so.
Well, we didn't hear your answer.
Well, they've been surveilling everything for forever, so they're just making it official. But they've been doing it unofficially for 30, 40 years. They've been tracking all of your expenditures and everything through the banks that they own and monopolize. I mean, let's just be open about this. Once you allow monopoly, which is an evil, then you have allowed coercive power. They can give you the service or not give you the service, just like they're doing to the banks that were caught with silver short positions. You know? Monopolies are illegal because they're evil. Monopolies are illegal because they have consistent bad results. Unfortunately, in this country, we allowed a monopoly called the Federal Reserve, and we allowed central banking. We not only allowed central banking to take over our currency, we allowed central banking to take over the commodity markets. And that's how you have situations like we now have with silver. The fault is on their part, not ours. And as I said, remember, if it isn't read into the congressional record 3 times to give public cognizance, it's not a law that affects us. Now, it may affect their incorporated banks as franchises, and that's where they'll try to catch us up in their insanity. It's up to us to hold the line, stand together, and bring forward the solutions and put them in their place. It's a hard job, but it has to be done. These are criminals who are now backed up against the wall, wondering how they're going to get out of the situation they placed themselves in. We have to understand that and realize that they're going to try to do damn near anything. They'll try to pass their laws off onto us. Thankfully, there are organizations and institutions that still exist in the world that do have the power to put an end to this. And we have the power within our grasp to put an end to it. And between the two things, the two forces coming from on top and from below, then the crooks in the middle get squeezed out. It's basically what happens. And that is exactly what is happening. However, you have to be aware that while they have the media mouthpiece, while they have the ability to lie and to confuse, while they have the ability to foist off their laws onto you as if you were subject to them, they're going to try to continue to do so. And so, more than anything, we must resist. Resist, resist, resist. I'm not suggesting that anybody, get violent, but resist. Say no. Continue to say no. Continue to bring it forward. Continue to object to what they're doing and presuming about you and your affairs and your assets and your life, because they don't actually have any right or authority to do any of the stuff that they're doing now. There are no emergency powers in the Constitution. You can look as long as you like, and you're never going to find one word about health. You're never going to find one word about any emergency powers. So any emergency powers that they have are emergency powers within the context of their own corporation and their own personnel. It has nothing to do with the general public. It doesn't have anything to do with you as an American. And we have well and truly established the fact that we do have a government, and we are a cognizant government that can reply to world affairs and concerns. So there's not really any doubt anymore about the fact that they've been foisting their laws off onto us under false pretenses. This is powerful, and you have to use it. Someone comes to you and says, we have reason to think that you are buying too much potash. That could be used to make gunpowder, right? So what? Your statutes, rules, codes, regulations, none of that stuff applies to me unless it's been published in the Congressional Record 3 times. Show me where it's been published in the Congressional Record and actually read into the Congressional Record 3 times, and then we'll talk. Otherwise, if you don't have any authority here, and get the hell off my land. Now, it's not always that easy. And they do hire ignorant goons who do things that are completely illegal and unlawful, and they should be strung up for it, okay? But what I'm telling you is that we have to resist. We have to continuously object. We have to keep objecting and keep bringing forward their lack of authority and their lack of lawful behavior that has resulted in this mess. That's our job. And if we don't object, well, then they get to do whatever they like. So object. Keep objecting. Realize that those members in Congress aren't your representatives, but they're their representatives. Okay? Keep drawing the line. Keep saying, look, you don't represent me, but don't let your laws, rules, codes, and regulations slop over onto this side of the table. Make sure that your people understand their limits and abide by them. This is the message that has to get through to the members of the Congress, to the members of the city governments, to all of the public bureaucrats, and all of the people that they hire as enforcers. They have to know that, hey, that doesn't apply to the general public. That just applies to your corporation. And your corporation does not represent all of us by any stretch. And no, there is no civil war permitted on our land and soil. So you can just stop dreaming about going after the other employees and trying to blame them for stuff. Because that is what their, modus operandi has been. They hire two groups of employees and then pit them together, right? So that's what they try for with civil war. They want Mr. Trump versus I don't know, Obama or whoever they get as the figurehead to lead the other side, right? And then they bat each other on the head and they create this huge inferno and kill a bunch of people and cause all sorts of destruction. You know, it's time that these guys were just exposed for what they are, what they do. Their motivation for it is always money and power. They create problems so that they can solve them and then get paid for solving something that they caused in the first place. And it's obvious what they're doing. So, just call them on it. Keep calling them on it. Use your voice. Use your pen. Use your little keyboard, right? Keep bringing it up. Keep showing them, hey, we can see you. We know what you're doing. We know who you are. We know who you work for. We know that both sides are employed by the Pope. So here's Popekins. Oh, I'm going to use the left and I'm going to use the right, and they're all going to go bang, bang, bang against each other. And, there's going to be this big mess to clean up afterward. And I'm going to benefit myself because I funded both sides and can't lose. Hello?
We still have you, Anna.
Well, I'm just saying, it should be boring by now, but we have to completely devote ourselves to objecting and spreading the word so that people are no longer in the dark, no longer watching this drama and taking it seriously, so that people know who's responsible at the end of the day and holds them accountable for what they're doing and failing to do.
Okay, next question. Are there any telltale signs that we can expect to see the de facto government and their financial system that would be connected with the releasing of control of American assets into our systems and would be clear indicator that our banking system has won the day and gained their acceptance?
Well, it's not a matter of their acceptance, it's a matter of our acceptance. I think you got that kind of turned around in your head there. We're the ones with all the money. We're the ones with all the credit. They're the ones that are flopping around like dead fish. Hello? Do we put them back in the water or do we let them die? It's not them that are making this decision. It's us. It's ours. Okay? And so it's not a matter of them accepting us. It's a matter of them realizing their position and what they're doing and making a decision on their part. You see, they never had a pot to begin with. They only seem to have power and money from purloining our money and our assets and pretending to represent us in ways that we never authorized. That's their entire shtick. Their entire narrative is that, oh, we don't know what happened to the American government. It disappeared after the Civil War, never came back. Well, guess what? We came back. Here we are. There's our claim. It's been through the high courts. What more are you going to say or do? They're running out of money even from their black ops because they actually don't own anything. They got into so much trouble selling paper silver because they don't own any silver. I don't know if you all caught it, but JP Morgan got caught with a silver short. They couldn't deliver on $34 billion worth of silver. And so then they went to the Fed window, they got an emergency loan, And then within a couple of days, basically, they turned around and they trotted out 750 million ounces of silver. Well, whose silver do you think that is? It's ours. They received that silver as part of the settlement of the Federal Reserve System bankruptcy. Okay, make a real clear distinction here between the Federal Reserve and the Federal Reserve System. Okay, the Federal Reserve System went bankrupt as a result of the big short on Wall Street in 2008 and the whole mortgage-backed security bubble. Okay, so there's already been one gigantic, horrible collapse that was based on what I would call irresponsible banking practices. And as a result of that, the creditors of the Federal Reserve System got a huge settlement. The Federal Reserve System was holding our silver. Guess who got our silver? And then used it as an asset to create credit that they then used to buy more silver, which they now have two piles of silver. One, ours, which is being used as collateral for borrowing, right? Creates all this extra billions of dollars of credit for JP Morgan. JP Morgan then takes those Federal Reserve notes that are spun off of our silver, buys more silver, and now he has a fake receipt scheme going, right? He can get rid of an equal amount of silver, and all it took the 750 million that he was.
You started up on JP Morgan and we lost you.
Okay. JP Morgan shows up after having to borrow 34 billion in emergency funding from the Federal Reserve with 750 million ounces of silver. Now I want you to watch this little scam. Back in 2009, the creditors of the Federal Reserve System, which was holding our silver in trust, okay, received our silver. So here's JP Morgan as a creditor of the Federal Reserve System in receipt of our silver. Now it's our silver, he can't spend it, but he can use it as collateral. So what he does is that he uses our silver as collateral to buy an equal amount of silver on the open market. So for the past 15 years or so, JP Morgan has been acquiring silver and acquiring silver. And every time that silver that they bought on the market comes through the door, an equal amount of our silver serving as collateral gets discharged and hiked out the back door. At the end of the substitution scheme, here's JP Morgan with all the receipts for all the silver that he bought, right? And here's the receipts are for 750 million ounces of silver. And there's the 750 million ounces of silver. So it looks like a clean deal, right? It looks like, well, he bought it fair and square on the open market. There's the silver. It matches up. But where's our silver? The silver that was being used as collateral originally and which has since disappeared. You see, there should be, instead of 750 million ounces of silver, there should be 1.5 billion ounces of silver, right? Half of it is gone. And it leaves the impression that everything is all hunky-dory and that JP Morgan just bought all this silver because it was so inspired to do so, when in fact they've been running this little backdoor trick to abscond with our silver, thinking that nobody was ever going to figure out where they got the big clump of silver in the first place. You see? All sorts of little crimes and fraud schemes and accounting tricks and just sleazy. Okay, this is what I have to deal with every day. And we have to keep calling them out on it. We have to keep objecting. We have to keep bringing forward, okay, well, what happened to all this money that you owed us? Or what happened to this asset that was being held in trust? Oh, and whatever happened to lately, they've been saying things like, oh, we lost the receipts and records for that. Oh, it was blown up in 9/11 when that plane flew into the Pentagon and just happened to hit the naval office, fiduciary's office that was looking into all of the records about the gold that was brought offshore by the U.S. Navy in the Philippines and other locations around the world. Oh, we just lost all that in that attack on 9/11. Damn good thing we kept our receipts, isn't it? You see, these people are a rare combination of criminal and clueless. Okay? And we have to deal with this. We have to bring some sense to this. We have to bring peace to this. That's what we're here for, is to put things right side up again so that the law is lawful, so that money is money, so that when you buy silver, you get silver instead of a piece of paper saying you're owed silver. We have to put an end to all of these criminal fraud schemes and substitution schemes and misrepresentation schemes and similar names schemes. I mean, here's an example of it. You know how the national motto is supposed to be, "In God we trust"? Well, to Americans, that means trust. We trust in God. We trust in divine providence. We realize that we're the recipients of all these blessings. You know, we take that to mean what it says. We trust in God. Would you care to guess how the municipal government interprets that? They interpret that to mean that we place everything in a trust. That all of the assets of the earth are put into the world trust that is operated by the Pope, the Unum Sanctum Trust. That's what they mean by "in God we trust." Who knew, right? Would you care to guess what the British Boston Brahmins and the British peers think it means? It means, of course, "in Gad we trust." Ever notice the Harvard accent? In God becomes in God, in Gad. Okay, what's Gad? Oh, another Mesopotamian god, not our God, their Gad. Okay. You see, this is the kind of deceitful wordplay, uh, deliberate misrepresentations and misinterpretations and
Happy horse shit.
oh yeah, all this kind of stuff is what I have to deal with every damn day. So I prefer that we all just talk normal, that we all just mean what we say in the popular sense, and that when we say in God we trust, we're talking about the Creator, and we're talking about trust in divine providence as our forefathers interpreted all of that. Being aware of what all these other people have seized upon and tried to make it mean. We can't be accountable for them. We can only be accountable for ourselves. Okay? And so that's what we have to endeavor to be, is accountable for ourselves. We have to mean what we mean and say what we say and make it clear to everybody what we mean by things. And other than that, there's no help for it. Because everybody can spin off all sorts of different meanings 10 different ways. Look at this business with unallocated and allocated silver. Okay, we are all agreed 100% that allocated silver means that silver has been taken off the shelf and it has been allocated to a specific owner, a specific destination, right? It's been allocated, it's been set aside. It actually exists. Okay, so when someone says unallocated silver, you immediately assume that there's this big stockpile of silver and your name hasn't been put on 10 ounces of it, but it's sitting there and it's ready to be accessed, right? That's what's inferred. That's what it would be implied in anybody's sane mind, is that it simply hasn't been placed under your name. If allocated means putting it under your name, then unallocated means it hasn't been placed under your name. But there's still the assumption, right, that it exists, that there's a stockpile of silver there that is ready to be accessed. And it turns out that not only is there no stockpile of silver, the bank didn't even try. They didn't even go through the motions of buying any silver. And they thought it was all right. They thought that was hunky-dory because they were allowed to do it after all. There was no law against it. Well, let's give those lawmakers in Washington something worthwhile to do, like outlawing fractional reserve banking. Why don't you get out your poison pens? Take charge here. You are now activated, right? You are now ready to go out and do things. So take up your poison pen and jot off a little letter and say, I believe that fractional reserve banking is intrinsically fraudulent and leads to continuous problems in our economy. As long as you're busy making up all sorts of laws trying to control me and surveil my purchases, why don't you get busy and write your little pen and get rid of Federal Reserve and get rid of reserve banking practices because they're unsound and fraudulent by nature. This is what I mean. You have to object. You have to get passionate enough. You have to realize when something is causing you enough harm to get upset about it and actually get in their face and say, listen, this is an obvious fraud scheme. You've allowed it to go on for many decades. It doesn't matter. It's still fraud. Cut it out. I mean, this is what it takes. If you've got somebody in their ear wheedling away and saying, hey, Jimmy, I'll give you $50 million in an offshore account, and all you have to do is, allow fractional reserve banking, and there's absolute dead silence on the other side, what's Jimmy going to do? Most Jimmys, anyway, are going to take the 50 million in the offshore account. They're going to sign their little Jimmy on the legislation, and they're going to skate, and they're going to say, well, there was no law against it. And what little Jimmy needs to hear over here is, if you do that, we're going to rip your guts out and have you shot for treason. Okay? There's no quid pro quo if there's not a quo to the quid, okay? If you're not objecting to all this shit, they get away with it. And that's the rule of Roman civil law, which, whether you know it or not, you're living under. Let him who will be deceived be deceived. If you don't object to the deception, then they get away with it. They're trying to get away with all these paper silver contracts right now. And when you really get down to it, all the Bank for International Settlements is doing is covering its own butt. It's trying to force these banks to be responsible after decades of letting them be irresponsible. Just saying. So we're going to all have to take responsibility for objecting to these things and bringing it forward and shoving it under their noses. Because until you do, then they have this wonderful thing called plausible deniability. You know, they ransacked my house. They thought I was keeping a lot more records there than I was. They ransacked my house for 5 days. I mean, they counted the floor tiles. They had all sorts of equipment in that house, looking for I don't know what. Gold? Silver? Correspondence with the Ayatollah? What in the hell are they looking for, right? Well, they're looking for records. They're looking for correspondence. They're looking for things that can prove that they're criminals, that prove that they were given information that they should have acted on and didn't, that they are criminally liable for their acts and omissions, and that they have no insurance and they have no right to the corporate veil. Okay, that's what they're looking for. That's why they attacked me, quite apart from trying to take a juicy piece of property. What they were looking for was evidence that I could use against them, not evidence concerning me. Okay? Because they know that it's kryptonite for them to have known about these things and done nothing. What they're looking for is the 7 years of due process during which I wrote thousands of letters and shipped them off all over the fricking world, telling people who were in positions of power in various governments all about all of the fraud, all of the coercion, all the hypocrisy, all of the violations of international law and public law and commercial law and every form of law you can think of that's been violated. That's what they were after. They wanted their plausible deniability restored. They wanted to say, oh, we didn't know. Nobody told us. Remember what Pope Benedict said? Immediately upon being advised and told about all these things, what did he say? Nobody told me. Right. Well, what I did all those years ago and continuing on in today is giving them no plausible deniability. We have the proof that they were told. We have the proof that they were told about the illicit shipping of our gold to the Philippines and elsewhere, offshoring all our gold. It was all taken off the docks by the U.S. Navy. And the Navy had the receipts for it. The Naval Fiscal Office was in the process of bringing all those receipts together and investigating it when they were blown apart on 9/11. Oh, well, they were probably looking for those receipts too. They don't want to hear about that. They spent 5 days ransacking my house. What do you think they were looking for? They were looking for their plausible deniability. They were looking for the other end of the correspondence. They were looking for the receipts. They were looking for all the information. They wanted to grab it, then destroy it, pretend it didn't exist. And oh, Anna, she's just this crazy old woman up in Alaska. We don't know. Well, they didn't find what they were looking for. And killing me won't help them. So their plausible deniability for all of this is shot. Long gone. It's been gone for at least 10 years. And it's never coming back. They're guilty as charged. And now the only question is, what do we want to do with them?
I got this
Well, first of all,
really nice rope.
we want to get our stuff back. We want to get the world turned right side up again. We want to get everybody fed and sheltered. You know, we have very practical goals that are not bad goals, are not bad goals for anybody. Okay? I personally think that what they've done is a monument to human stupidity. You know, they got away with it. And so they just kept on. They didn't hear that other voice in the ear, you know. They had all of the cronies over here, all the payola experts, all the big time corporations that were going to make big donations to their political campaigns. And they just weren't getting the other side of the argument. They weren't hearing we're going to charge you with treason. We're going to take your house. We're going to put you in jail if you do that. And so they just kept on and on and on. And it was all sort of an experiment to find out how much they could get away with. Just like little kids. Just like brainless buffoons. No sense of honor or integrity or anything like that. Forget it. They were just looking for that line that they couldn't cross, constantly poking at that line. They're still doing it, even though it's already a moot point. They're still trying to test that line of what they can get away with. What are the people going to when are the people going to draw the line and say, no, you don't get to do that? See, they're testing the limits of their power, or what they think of as their power, by what the pushback is. They're not hearing that other voice. And that's why it's our responsibility as individual living people who have skin in this game to make our voices heard, whether they want to hear us or not. And to an extent, they can turn down the mute button, but they can't turn off the mail. They can't turn off the public recordings. They can't turn off emails. They can't avoid being shown up. So they have the liability. We have the power of objection. They have the fraud dripping all over them. And we have the answer in Roman civil law. Once we object to the fraud, it's over. Now it's just a matter of, it's an ineluctable process. It's the slow grinding of the mill of God, so they say. And there is no doubt the final outcome is already a given. It started that day when we told Pope Benedict XVI what had been going on. When he replied he didn't know, that nobody told him. But from that moment, he'd been told. And from that moment to this, all these other yahoos have been told too. The FBI has been told. The DOJ has been told. The Office of the Inspector General has been told. The British Consulate has been told. The British AG has been told. The members of the Privy Councils and the parliaments have been told. The kings and queens have been told. Everybody has been told. And to the extent that they did nothing about it or sought to continue it, they are either criminals themselves or accomplices to crime.
All right, Anna. I'm gonna have to call it tonight. I'm dragging here. I'm not doing good.
All right, Shannon.
Thank you all for your patience and your pity.
Yes, sorry about the bad signal, and
God bless Alaska.
yes, God bless everybody, and everybody try not to be distracted by all the stuff going on. It's 90% of it is fireworks, and it's a show. So don't worry, good things are happening, and you should be safe. There should be no reason for you to worry. And just think some good thoughts. Remember us in your prayers. Send shekels. Keep it going. Don't be drifting off course into all sorts of nonsense that the media is spinning. See ya. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye.